Hi everybody, and welcome to the Big Rob Show. Today I have an amazing meal I can't wait to show you, all centered around the essential element of Cuban cuisine, mojo. And who knows, a pork chop and black beans don't hurt either, am I right? Mojo has a very interesting backstory. Originating in the Canary Islands, a small Spanish archipelago off the coast of Morocco, there they use two different varieties of mojo. They have a green variety and a red variety based on which type of peppers they use in the mojo. Mojo can be considered a sauce, a marinade, or even a vinaigrette depending on what uses we have for it. And once the Spanish colonized and immigrated to the Caribbean, the varieties were endless. In Dominican Republic, they call it wasacaca, but it's very strongly based off that original green peppered green mojo. Puerto Rico also has a mojo that they use more herbs like cilantro, culantro, or parsley, depending on what regions of Puerto Rico. And in Cuba, we use mainly citrus, garlic, and either pork fat or olive oil. So let's get in the kitchen. Let me show you how to make that Cuban one and get some pork chops on the pan. Here we have all of our ingredients for our Cuban mojo. Traditionally, we'd use sour orange, also known as Sevilla orange, but that's a little bit harder to find in certain parts of the country. So we use a combination of regular oranges and limes. And the acidity of the lime will balance the sweetness of the orange and make our mojo absolutely vibrant and delicious. So what we're gonna do is mix all these ingredients together. I'm gonna start off with half a cup of good olive oil. Put that in our big mason jar. Then we have our spices, which make it definitely Cuban, and these are the spices that we see a lot in Cuban cuisine. Ground cumin, we got a tablespoon of ground cumin, we got a tablespoon of coarse kosher salt, and half a tablespoon of some dried oregano, and then a couple grinds of fresh cracked black pepper. So we're just gonna mix this up, get it all nice mixed together, just so it doesn't clump up when we get a big clump of one of the spices. Okay, and then we're just gonna carefully pour this into our mason jar and olive oil. Okay. Boom. Then we're gonna get going on the fruit. And I'm gonna show you an easy way to cut fruit. Most people will think just to cut it straight in half, but one time a Peruvian chef who was making ceviche tableside showed me this awesome way to cut citrus to get not only the most amount of juice, but to make it actually easier to squeeze that juice. So what we're gonna do is, rather than cut straight down the middle through the stem end, we're gonna cut just to the side of the stem. Okay, and then same thing, we're gonna lay it flat and cut just to the side of that center part, and then using your knife at an angle, we're gonna cut that core out. Okay, so here we got all the seeds and that core. Just gonna give it a little ring and squeeze any little juice out. And then now our orange is a lot easier to squeeze, and you're gonna get way more juice out of it. And so really what we're looking for is about 3/4 of a cup of citrus juice combined. So we're gonna squeeze all our oranges and all of our limes. And let's cut our lime just to show you again how we do that. We're gonna cut it down just to the side of that core, okay? Right? And lay it flat. We got the stem end, okay, just to the side of it, not through it, and then at an angle, cut it out. Give the center a ring to grab all those juices. If a little pulp falls in, that is perfectly fine. And then see how easy that lime squeezes? It's absolutely beautiful. All right. Then really the most important part of Cuban cooking, in my opinion, is garlic. You can never have enough garlic. If you think you have enough garlic, add some more garlic, and that will be enough. So a nice little squeeze on that whole bulb will release all the cloves. Get all that paper, and this one is full of it. And then what we're gonna do is grab some cloves. I'll show you the easiest way to get the clove. free from its papery husk. You grab your knife, lay it right on top, grab your palm, smack the knife down, completely 100% down, and boom, crush that garlic, take that paper right off. It easily falls away. And then we're gonna mince the garlic by giving it one more big tap with our knife. Pulverize our garlic, nice little chop chop. Okay, and then scoop the garlic right into your mason jar and keep crushing this garlic out. I'm gonna get all these citrus fruit juiced up, all this garlic chopped, and we'll show you once we got everything mixed together. Now that we have all our ingredients for our mojo in the jar, we just gotta cover it up and give it a shake just to get all those ingredients married together. And we can put this in the refrigerator and use it at another time, or get those pork chops marinated right now. What I like to do is make this the night before, get our pork chops marinated and allow them to absorb all that flavor overnight. But when you're in a pinch, you can definitely get those pork chops marinated and just have them sit out for an hour or two before cooking, and it'll be just as good. Now let's get our pork chops. We've got rib chops, which have the bone in them, which are gonna give them even better flavor. Look at these absolute beauties. They have both the loin and the tenderloin portion of the pork on them, with the bone right down the middle. Just gonna add to the flavor. They're considered the T-bone of the pork, or the porterhouse, depending on how much of that fillet you have of them. So what we're gonna do is put these pork chops in a zip top bag and get the mojo on them. And I'm gonna put them in the refrigerator for about an hour or two. Again, like I said, you can definitely do this the night before, which is just gonna give them even more flavor. And we'll get them marinated and get them cooking. So let's get all these in the bag. We got 5 nice sized chops. Ooh, slippery. And then our mojo all on top. All that garlic, oregano, cumin, citrus juices, the oil is gonna coat them. Alright, let's get some of this air out. Okay. And I like putting it in a casserole dish, just in case there's any leaks. You don't want to make a big mess in the fridge, but you know, get these all massaged up, all that mojo distributed around the pork chops, and into the fridge. Now that our pork chops are in the refrigerator marinating with that wonderful mojo, let's get cooking on our Cuban style black beans. Here we have some vegetables, also known as the sofrito, which is kind of the basis of Latin cuisine. It's a vegetables sauteed in some olive oil. And so we have our Spanish onion. I already got one medium-sized Spanish onion diced up. I'm gonna show you how to do the other one. Some green bell pepper. And I also got some homegrown little habanada peppers, which are a heatless habanero. Nice little sweet red pepper, but you can definitely use red bell pepper if you don't have any of these little guys. And then of course, garlic. So let's get all of our vegetables cut up. We're gonna cut our onion right down the root end. And then what I like to do is, you can see the natural curvature of the onion. I'm just gonna cut along all those little striations, angling my knife. And as you see me pivot the knife, when I get to the middle, I'm cutting straight down, but then kind of angling that knife. And that'll help us get a nice, quick and easy dice. We'll turn it around and then just dice it up. It'll naturally fall apart into a nice, easy dice. Let's do that one more time. So we're pretty much starting at an almost, you know, parallel to the cutting board, and then angling the knife as we go up, so that when we get to the middle part, we're slicing straight down, and then coming around the other way, being careful of our fingers, turning it around, and then slicing to make that dice. Alright, nice, quick and easy dice. So we got all of our onion diced up. Now let's get our pepper. We're going to slice the top off, get that stem and discard it. Lay it flat so we have a flat surface to work with, and then just take those nice sides off, going around the seeds and that white pith, which is going to be a little bit bitter. And if we have to clean up the pepper a little bit, we could always, being very careful, just take that white pith out. It's going to be super bitter, not very tasty. Same thing with this one. And then for optimal dicing and safety, I like to have the outer part facing down on my board. Have my fingers, use my ring and my thumb finger to basically hold the pepper flat, and then just make nice slices. Okay, turn it around and a nice dice. We want a relatively small dice. We want these vegetables to cook down. It's going to be a little chunky, but we don't want big chunks of vegetables in our beans. Again, cut those into little cubes. That's the thing, guys, you don't have to go super fast with your knife work. Get nice and comfortable, go as slow as you have to, being very careful. And as you gain more practice, you speed up naturally. So safety is always #1 priority. Okay, one more time. Slices. Stack them all together and dice. Always remember to tuck that thumb. Then we have the little top that we can just slice up and dice. And as you can see, I'm using that claw movement, okay? I got my hand in a claw with my thumb tucked behind, okay? Using the finger as a guide with the knife, okay? And that's gonna keep you nice and safe, prevent any nicks. With the garlic, put your knife flat on the garlic. Use your fist or use your palm. Okay, and that's gonna crush the garlic, and then we're just gonna chop it all up nice and fine. And we're gonna keep our garlic a little bit separated from the onions and peppers. We'll add that in after these other vegetables have had time to sweat. But I'll show you that once we get everything cooking in the pan. Let's get all this garlic crushed up one more time. Smash the garlic and just chop. In this case, I got my hand on the tip of my knife and I'm just rocking it back and forth. And the pressure of my hand is keeping that tip of the knife on the board and allowing me just to go back and forth and crush up that garlic. Okay, let's get these other two busted out. Sometimes you get a little fat chunky one, so I like to just split it in half so you get that flat side. Again, it's all about safety, guys. Crush that garlic. Crush that garlic. Great way to get the anger out. Crush that garlic. And then just chop it all in with the other garlic. Nice and fine garlic. Put that to the side while we get these nice little red habanero peppers. And for these are a lot smaller, so we're just going to take that top off. Top off. Top off. Boom. Then we're going to split these in half. And you can use your knife or use a spoon to scrape these out and get all the seeds out. Okay, get all the seeds out. And same thing, we're gonna just slice them up, turn them, and dice them up. Slice and dice. If you're using the red bell pepper, use the same technique that we did with the green one. Create that stable base, cut the sides off, and then slice and dice. Now whatever you do, if you like some hot peppers and chili peppers and you want to add those in, that is perfectly acceptable. While not super traditional to Cuban cuisine, we don't like spicy food. We like well-seasoned food, but not spicy. But you can definitely use some chili peppers in this recipe. Just be very careful that if you are chopping chili peppers, do not touch your eye after. You will regret it. I highly recommend using a glove when working with chili peppers, because those seeds and stems will definitely penetrate your fingers, and you definitely don't want to be rubbing your eyes after that. Alrighty, now that we got all of our veg cut up, let's get the pan out and get some beans going. Now that we have our vegetables cut, let's get these beans cooking. But first, a little disclaimer. Traditionally, we always use dry black beans. But today's meal is all about a quick, weekday, delicious meal on the table within an hour. And we want to get this going quick, so we're using canned beans. It's a great way to make black beans super fast. We can easily doctor them up and still have great tasting white rice and black beans. So let's get these vegetables in the pot. We're gonna slowly saute these. We really don't want any color. We're actually gonna sweat them. We get all the vegetables in at once. We're gonna start letting them break down. Let all that moisture come out of them. Give them a stir every few minutes. And we started here with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And just get these guys going. Adjust our heat, because as we dump in all those vegetables, the temperature of the pot drastically changes. So we want to raise the temp just for a few minutes to bring that temperature back up. And then we could always lower the heat to stabilize the pan and cooking. Remember guys, don't ever feel afraid to cook on high heat. If your vegetables are cooking too fast, just remove your pan. Move the pan from the burner and you'll be fine. Always have a little bit of liquid off to the side and you can almost immediately stop the cooking process, but never be afraid to cook with high heat. Manufacturers made stove tops and burners with knobs for a reason. It's all about just getting to know your burner, getting to know your stove. So we've got these vegetables cooking beautifully. I've got the onions, the peppers in here, but not the garlic. The garlic I kept to the side. We don't want to add that in right away because it'll not only burn but make the entire dish bitter. And so we wait a few minutes, let these vegetables kind of break down a little bit first, and then get the garlic in. Alright, these vegetables are looking absolutely great. They're starting to sweat and get that moisture off. Alrighty, see them nice and glistening. At this point, we're going to add our garlic. This is about 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. gonna stir that in. Now that the garlic's in, we're gonna start seasoning it. We wanna season at every single layer so that our beans are of optimal flavor and optimal seasoning. We're gonna start off with a little bit of salt and pepper. It's gonna draw out more moisture and help concentrate the flavor of these vegetables. Always season to your taste. I'm putting in about 1 to 2 tablespoons of salt. And a couple grinds of black pepper. Alright, we can stir that up. Now to speed this process up, you could always add a lid. It's just going to help those vegetables sweat even faster. But when you take that lid off, there's going to be a lot of water in there because the condensation has nowhere to go. So I like, going nice and slow with the lid off. It's going to help reduce those vegetables. Remember, we're not going for a lot of color, so you don't have to go on super high heat. You want to constantly be stirring these vegetables and letting them just break down, soften. The onions will get nice and translucent. And as the moisture comes out of the vegetables, it is able to evaporate. And we're going to give this a little bit more time and then add some more seasoning, which is going to make the beans more Cuban style with our seasoning mix that we have. And I like to always add my seasonings to the fat and the vegetables rather than add the beans first and then the seasoning. There's multiple reasons for that, but the main one is that you want those seasonings like the cumin and oregano that we'll be using to bloom in the oil and open up. It's going to make their flavor more intense than if we just added it after the fact, after all that bean and liquid is in the mixture. We want those spices to interact with the fat. Fat equals flavor. Fat helps open up those spices. And at the end, we'll have super tasty beans. Now this is a strictly vegetarian recipe in terms of the beans. After all, we're putting a big pork chop on it, but the beans are vegetarian. That doesn't mean to say that you can't add some bacon at the beginning of this whole process. You're only going to make it even more tasty. But it's up to you. I like the clean vegetal flavor of the black beans. Alright, so some of that water and moisture from the vegetables has dissipated, evaporated. Pick your word of the day. And we're getting a little bit drier of a mixture, and this is where I want to add my cumin, my oregano, and then a few bay leaves. So we got the cumin, we got just the cumin, the ground oregano, and a few bay leaves. If your bay leaves are tiny like mine, use a couple. If you got one big one, that works as well. We're gonna mix that in with the vegetables and the olive oil. I wish you had smell-o-vision because this smells absolutely delicious. It smells like abuela's house. Alright. Just gonna give those spices some time to open up. Incorporate that flavor into the vegetables. As you see, the vegetables are breaking down. They're softening. The only color that's in there are the vegetable flavors and the cumin that's kind of pigmenting that onion right now. But they're not brown. They're not super caramelized. They're just nice and sweated. And that's just going to allow that flavor to penetrate that can of black beans and become one delicious bean dish. Alright. What we're going to do is add our can of black beans. And at this point, I like to give it a stir. See how we're looking. Your favorite can of black beans may be more water consistency and be more liquidy. And at that point, I'd tell you, just let it go, let it cook. These are a lot thicker, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water. You can go chicken stock if you don't mind having that broth in there. You can go vegetable stock. You can do a little bit of white wine. But I think I'm just gonna keep this a nice clean flavor and add a little bit of water. A quarter of a cup would do. And from here, I'm definitely gonna put the lid on. I don't want this to reduce too much. I don't want the to evaporate. So I wanna keep all that moisture in. Put the lid on. And at this point, we can leave it for about half an hour. And in that half an hour, we can cook up those pork chops, get a pot of rice going, and boom, we've got dinner 45 minutes to an hour from start to finish. Or you could keep this going for a couple of hours on super low and slow, and that flavor is just gonna be even more intense, more delicious. But it's up to you. Sometimes we gotta get dinner on the table after a long day of work. Sometimes we got a little bit more time to spend to develop those flavors. We're gonna let this go, and we'll see how those pork chops are doing in the fridge marinating. Okay, so our Cuban style black beans have been cooking for about half an hour to 45 minutes. We are going to give them a check and taste them in case we have to adjust the seasoning. And I always recommend that we taste our food throughout the cooking process. You can adjust the seasoning as you go, which will give your food a lot better flavor than if you just throw in a bunch of seasoning at the end. So these are looking absolutely beautiful, nice and thick. Those vegetables have broken down. You can still see them, but they are now part of the sauce altogether. So let's give them a quick taste. A little bit more salt. And again, it's up to your preference, how much seasoning you need. We'll stir that in. And these are pretty much ready to plate up. And we can just hold these on warm until we have our pork chop cooked off. So let's just put the lid back on and put it on the literal back burner. It is time to cook the pork chops. We've been waiting for this all day. We have taken the pork chops out of the refrigerator. They are nicely marinated in the Mojo. I've dried the pork chops off. Nice and dry on a paper towel. You want to get some of that liquid off. Okay. We dry it off on both sides. Get our pan nice and hot. And we are going to slowly and very carefully put the pork chop away from us so that any oil doesn't splatter. I've got about 1 or 2, and you can see it smoking. That means it is nice and ready to preheat. That is what you want to hear. You need that sizzle. That means the pan is perfectly hot and ready to receive that pork chop. Alrighty, now key is not to touch it. You want to let that pork chop make contact with the pan. You want to let the pan do the work. It's going to develop a nice crust. And when we've developed the crust and the pork chop is ready to move, it will tell us. It will start to come off the pan, because right now it is stuck on there. If we try to move it, all we're going to do is rip and tear the pork chop, and we do not want that. We want the pan to do the work and let it cook. Pork chop is cooking beautifully. You're hearing any extra moisture being evaporated from the pan. This is the time you actually want to listen to your food. This isn't the time to walk away from your food. You want to be on top of your food. Adjust the temperature as needed on your burner. It is cooking beautifully, rendering all that fat from the pork chop We're gonna give it a nice sear on both sides. Again, the pork chop will tell us when it's ready and come off. If you're using a non-stick skillet, you're gonna be able to have a little bit more give. It's not gonna stick. You'll be able to flip it whenever you want. But really, you're looking for that nice, deep, amber, dark brown color. And we want it on both sides. And we're gonna finish it in the oven at 350. So I have my oven preheated. And cook it to your desired temperature. My best recommendation is to use a meat thermometer. There we go. Give it a little bit more time. We'll finish it in the oven, cook it all the way through. Leave a little bit of pink for my preference, but if you like your pork all the way done, then you go ahead and do that. There we go. You got that nice brown, looking absolutely gorgeous. Cook it on both sides, and then we'll just kiss it on the skillet on the fat side, render some of that fat out before throwing the pan in the oven. Again, if you're using non-stick, you have a little bit more give on the stove top. You don't want to throw your non-sticks in the oven, so you can definitely put it on a tray or roasting rack, but don't throw your non-sticks in the oven. The high temperature of the oven is too damaging for the pan, so always be careful with that. About you, but that looks absolutely beautiful. Now, we're gonna get that little fat side. Nice and we got that nice fat all browned up. That's just going to help render that fat as it finishes in the oven. Kind of soft base. And we'll throw this in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the doneness you desire. Alrighty, our pork chop is out of the oven and it is looking absolutely delicious. You want to give it some time before plating or cutting into it. You need those juices to redistribute in the pork chop. I'd say about equal amount of time that you put it in the oven. So about 5-10 minutes you want to keep it out on a tray, allow those juices to redistribute, let the meat rest and relax, and then plate up. So let's get to that. Got our delicious black beans, and I got a bowl full of some nicely cooked white rice. Beans are looking great. Just want to get a nice amount of those black beans all over our white rice. Nice healthy portion. And then our pork chop right on top. That's a monster. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. A nice little wipe down. And there you have it. A Mojo marinated bone-in pork chop with Cuban style black beans and white rice.